There are currently 3 races, all hotly contested in the NFL right now. The race for the number 1 pick and who is the worst team in the league. The race to squeak into the playoffs and convince your fan base that it wasn't a totally lost season. And then the one that we really care about, which is, I don't know, the 4 or 5 teams that actually have a chance at making it to the Super Bowl with the halfway point power rankings. I'm George Chahrouri, Eric Eager alongside, brought to you, of course, by mybookie.ag. We'll start with the worst. 32
As one does.
As we do. 32 through 21. A huge surprise here. Nathan Peterman has put the team on his back. 3 pick sixes in 150 attempts. Very impressive stuff from the Bills.
Yeah, I mean, and numerically, right, the Bills' defense is actually pretty good here, but we do have to make an adjustment, I think, for Peterman because he has been so outlier so far. They are a team that it would be difficult to pick straight up, even in games like we're going to see against the Jets moving into the future here. So, yeah, this is a tough one. I think if you're looking for the race for the number 1 pick, however, there is actually a clear favorite, and that is the Oakland Raiders. Oakland has the 3rd toughest schedule moving forward here. Not really any signs of wanting to win a game. So I think in terms of, for the number 1 pick, Oakland, and then Arizona, I think, is a dark horse because they have the 4th toughest schedule moving forward.
That was my next question, which is, look, there are teams clearly at the bottom, but who will actually get the number 1 pick is kind of a different story, right? Cleveland is down there in the depths, but they're clearly trying to win now and establish something for next season. And then you've got the Raiders, who have made a lot of shrewd moves. They shipped Amari Cooper out. I'm sure people are looking back on that trade in hindsight of Monday Night Football in a more clear light, perhaps, today. And then you've also got a team like, say, the San Francisco 49ers, who it seems are not going to go ahead and tank on the season. So the door is open for some of these bottom feeders to make their way. Let's move on to some things that are slightly more impressive, and that's the middle of the pack with 20 through 11. The Jaguars have fallen pretty far. The Cowboys, we never really expected them to be that far up, but a team like the Packers, who has such an elite quarterback, we see them down here in the slightly bottom half of the league. What are your thoughts on them trying to push forward?
Yeah, I think there's obviously a chance there. Anytime you have Aaron Rodgers, who's one of the most valuable players in the league, you have an opportunity. And they came out of the last 2 games, which I think was the really difficult part of their schedule, Rams and Patriots, both on the road, looking like a team that can still compete. However, in that division right now, Minnesota really, they've won 4 of their last 5 games. Chicago has taken care of business against some bad teams. Minnesota and Chicago play each other, so one of those teams presumably will get a win next Sunday night. So, for the Packers, I think the issue is numerically, right? I think that their chances of winning that division are pretty low, and hence their chances of making the playoffs in an NFC that has, a lot of good teams in the NFC South, for example, is low. So I like them here at 17. I think that, it might be difficult for them moving forward.
I'm going to say, on the flip side of that, I think they're the best team in this middle group. And I think the reason for that is pretty clear, right? Aaron Rodgers is head and shoulders above every quarterback in this tier, I guess, save really for Russell Wilson. But I'm taking Aaron Rodgers in that fight every single time. And I think they have a lot of room to grow defensively, right? Mm-hmm. They've got a lot of young pieces. I think they understand how to play defense in today's NFL, right? I think the highest rate of 6 defensive backs on 1st and 2nd down. And they just played 2 really, really good teams, 2 of the top 4 teams in the NFL, and they lost, which you would expect, right? But I don't think that means they can't beat the Minnesota Vikings the next time they play. I don't think that doesn't mean they can't beat the Chicago Bears the next time they play. And look, I'm not going to put it past Aaron Rodgers as he's getting healthier to actually push them into the playoffs.
Yeah, I think that highlights the real difference, again, between where we'd have a team power rated or where we'd have a team projected and then where they actually finish, right? So the issue with Green Bay is not that they're not better, it's that they've already played the aforementioned Minnesota and Chicago at home, right? So their upcoming, with them is just a little bit less probable given that they're both road games. But I would say that, among these teams, this one, if they were to make the Super Bowl or the playoffs, for example, would have probably the highest odds to make the Super Bowl.
There you go. Before we get into the top 10, I want to remind you that if you are watching a sporting event and you're like, this could be more exciting, right? I'm watching, a couple of, maybe a Bills game.
Some action on Tuesday night.
Yeah. You want to make it more exciting, you want to head to mybookie.ag, even if it's not football, some Tuesday NBA, whatever it may be. They offer everything that you could possibly want in terms of making bets, whether it is on an individual player, on a team in a given night, or on a team for the entire season, maybe even some MVP odds. They've got you covered. They have great customer service, and they make it easy to cash out. So head to mybookie.ag, use promo code PFF to get a dollar for dollar match on your first deposit. It is simple. PFF plus mybookie.ag. You play, you win, you get paid. All right, some teams hoping to get paid off at the end of the season, particularly that top four. We're going to talk first, though, about which teams are making a claim for sneaking in to that fifth best team in the NFL position. We've got Minnesota and Atlanta kind of climbing their way, clawing their way up. And then we've got teams like Pittsburgh and Carolina who have really put together, 3 or 4 consecutive solid games. In this kind of muddled group, where do you see a team separating themselves?
Yeah, I think that 10 through 5, makes a case for not overreacting to the first month of the season, right? With Minnesota, Atlanta, Pittsburgh, even the Chargers starting out at 1 and 2, having their difficulties, but elevating themselves here. For me, I think it's Pittsburgh. When I watched, when we watched the Pittsburgh game, that was a pick that we had this week for Greenline. When you watch Pittsburgh, you just see that there are. Their defense is improving, but their offense seems to be just a well-oiled unit. Ben Roethlisberger's not grading necessarily as well as he has historically, but he's facing the least amount of pressure. James Conner is terrific, both as a runner and as a receiver, and that receiving core with Antonio Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster, and a couple tight ends that made a bunch of big plays against the Ravens. I think that is a very complete offense, and offense wins in the NFL this time of the year.
We will see on Thursday night which of those teams, the Panthers in number 6 and the Steelers in number 5, are really better, right? It's NFC versus AFC. I think there's some question as to who actually faces kind of the tougher teams there. And when you're talking about offense, we should not write off the Carolina Panthers, who have had a renaissance on offense. Cam Newton is playing so much better than he did last year. Norv Turner has adjusted. I think there's probably no bigger compliment that you can give an NFL coach than the ability to change and learn. And Norv Turner's done a fantastic job. Christian McCaffrey, Curtis Samuel is breaking out over there. So that'll be interesting to see, because I think you could make the claim, right, that the Carolina Panthers should be in that fifth spot, and you could do the same for the Chargers, who theoretically could be getting a lot better with Joey Bosa coming back. So Philly, Atlanta, Minnesota, for me, have a uphill road to get into that fifth spot. Atlanta obviously has no defense. I think Philly, there are some questions in the secondary, and then of course Minnesota can't pass protect to save their lives, and Kirk Cousins somehow has been making magic happen. All right, to the top 4 we go. Kansas City in 4, the Rams drop to 3, the loss to New Orleans pushes New Orleans up to 1, and the Patriots sit in 2. So, are we looking at Saints-Pats, or do you see a wrinkle being thrown in there?
Yeah, I mean, again, this is a difference between what power rankings say and where the math shakes out. Kansas City has a pretty easy schedule as it were the end of the season here. They have a 1-game lead on New England. New England does have the tiebreaker, but I do think that there's a pretty real possibility that the Chiefs end up with the 1 seed. Now, historically, they have not been good at Arrowhead in the playoffs, but I do think that, getting home field with Pat Mahomes, I think the calculus changes there. But, in terms of which team is better right now, I think New England has shown quite a bit lately defensively, and as their offense sort of comes into form with Josh Gordon, Rob Gronkowski gets healthy, that offensive line fortifies a little bit. I do think that they are a team moving up.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Obviously, we've got Kansas City and the Rams facing off on Monday night. Obviously, the winner of that game will likely move up, give themselves. So if the Chiefs lose that game, right, and they'll probably still sit in 4, but now all of a sudden it becomes a lot more of a question as to whether they get to play at home or on the road. And then you've got Rams-Saints. Obviously, the Saints now at the tiebreaker should those two teams meet, and they have the same record. So a lot of things shaping up to be very interesting. Does it really matter to you where these teams end up 1 through 4 at the end of the season, or is it just all about playoff seeding?
Well, I think we have seen that, when New England faced Kansas City, home field advantage probably mattered, and we do know that when New Orleans faced the Rams, home field certainly did matter. So I think in this power rankings, probably not. I think they'll be within 10 ELO points of each other by the end of the season if things go as we think. But in terms of the actual seeding, I do think it matters. If New Orleans and New England end up with the 1 seeds, I do think it is the Super Bowl that you talked about. Whereas if the flip side is true, I think it's a little bit more uncertain.
Well, it is shaping up to be a fun one down the stretch, as long as you're not the Bills. Anyways, for more, check us out at ProFootballFocus.com and on the PFF forecast, which you can download on Podcast One or wherever you get your podcasts.